Hello, this is a follow-up to the video I made 4 years or more ago, which I was just trying to do it. It was late at night, I was sleepy, and it looked like I was reading a hostage statement, but I was actually being extemporaneous. But I had thought through the subject before, so it wasn't like I was, had nothing in my head. However, in the process of making, it was on the subject, it was supposed to be what is feminism, but then I realized, no, it's really what is a feminist. And in the process, a couple of thoughts did come into my head that hadn't been there before. One was, and they were having to do with what you might call a sincerity condition, namely that for the feminist to be someone to be a feminist, they must have some notion of what benefits women, and they must actually want to benefit women. So there must be a sincerity. They must sincerely believe certain things, and they must sincerely be wanting to help make women happier and stuff. Anyway, and I think it's always occurred to me that that's easier for me to answer than the question of what is feminism. So this time, with my new glasses, I'm going to answer that. But for that, I do not already have any preconceived ideas. So I'm going to try to come up with an answer on the spot in a way that's consistent with what I said about a feminist. And what I said in what is a feminist, I said the only reasonable use of that word I could think of is it means a person who is devoting a substantial amount of their time to trying to make life better for women, and that didn't specify what their idea about how to improve women's life consisted in, but they had to, so they could be, as I said, liberals, conservatives, they could be religious, they could have completely different ideas about where women's welfare lies, but they must have a sincere belief about that, and they must be worried about and concerned about the welfare of women and devote some amount of time to it. So basically the idea of a feminist is, as I'm suggesting the word should be used, is along the lines of the word activist. So if you're an activist, you are devoting yourself to making some change and improvement in some area. And if you're a feminist, you're an activist who's trying to make a change to improve the lives of women one way or another. Anyway, okay, so what is feminism? Because feminism is, and this may undermine my whole idea to define feminist the way I did, and that is because feminism suggests an idea, an ideology. So feminism, I guess, would have to be some theory about the welfare of women. Okay, so in other words, to be a feminist, you must have something called feminism, and that feminism is to some extent, coherent idea or theory, ideology, notion about the welfare of women. So feminism then is any theory which purports to include an understanding of the nature of women and what, if any, things in the world or in a particular country or in society are frustrating the fulfillment of the nature of women. So I guess this is all being invented on the spot. So I guess feminism would have to have some understanding of what's a popular subject these days. What is the definition of a woman? So there must be some theory about the nature of women. What is the nature of a woman? And so, likewise, what is it that makes a woman happy? And what is it in our current society, structures, laws, customs, norms, behavior that is restricting, standing in the way of greater female fulfillment. Okay, so I think that's a bit brief, and I guess like with my definition of feminist, it's formal in the sense that you don't. It can allow any number of views. So you could have for example, you could be someone who's say a Muslim. So you're a Muslim, and so you basically accept Islam, and you accept the Islamic notion of what women are and what the relationship between women and men are. But for some reason, you're in a Muslim country, and you're not rejecting Islam. Now, you may have some particular interpretation. You may have carefully studied the Quran and the Hadith and whatnot, and Islamic law, and come up with particular interpretations related to women. But somehow you're not in this imaginary situation. You're still a Muslim, and you're not a heretic. But you're living in a Muslim society, and you say, consistent with Islam, at least on certain principles of Islam, we need to make some changes. In other words, you have a particular interest in the fate of women because you are a feminist. That's the subject that interests you, and you have some theory of women. Now, in the case of Islam, it may be one which is viewed as very conservative in some circles in the United States and Canada and the West. And that is, you may believe that and it's not just Muslims, but others. You may think that the man should be the head of the family, and so on and so forth. And so you're not trying to eliminate that, and you think male authority must have a role to play, but you do see some things. For example, you may be in a Muslim country, and you accept the idea of male dominance, but you don't think that the dominant male should be beating the wife. Okay, so maybe you're in some country where that's commonly done, and perhaps it's commonly justified in terms of supposedly Islam, because it says somewhere in the Quran this, that, or the other thing. So you would be worried about your sisters, and you would try to first of all clarify that Islamic law does not require beating your wives, or doesn't even allow it, or it allows it only a little bit and not as much as it's being practiced. And so you're out, and even if that's accepted, it may be that the fact is many men in your Muslim country are behaving that way, just as men might be behaving that way in a Christian country. And so you are out to put into place some kinds of protections for women against this. First of all, by promoting the notion that wife beating is bad, and so on and so forth. So you might be trying to convince men to behave better, or you might be trying to change the law or whatever. Anyway, that person's who's a feminist would have feminism because they have some notion, some conception, some worldview about the place of women, the nature of women, the definition of women, so to speak, in the Aristotelian sense of definition of woman, which is not a dictionary definition, but a statement that states the account. It gives an account of the essence, what it is to be a woman. So you would distinguish how to identify a woman from what is the essence of a woman. You might say that, well, the way you identify a woman is it's any human being who was born with the equipment that would allow them upon maturity to give birth to children. So there are ways to check if people have that equipment and have had it from the beginning. And you might say, well, that's how you identify a woman. But that's not really a definition, because it doesn't tell you what the essence of woman is. Now, but I have made a list of things that seem to be strongly connected with women, but they are more what you would call accidents rather than essence. But the various accidents are presumably connected to something essential. For example, this may seem trivial, but I won't go into details, but if you notice, women have an appreciation for flowers that men don't have. And this is not a minor thing, and I think this is something essential. And there are other things like that. And these various things, but you can't define a woman as the human being who likes flowers. But it must be something about the essence that gives rise to them seeing something in flowers that men don't see, and jewelry, and chocolate, and ice cream, and certain other things. But so you would have to have an empirical account of the behavior of women, and then something which draws it together about something essential. Interestingly, on the question of feminism, I just happened to read something yesterday just accidentally looked. So getting out of Islam into, say, Catholicism, there are many Catholics. And here's I just happened to see this. It's a part of although I have studied the Summa Theologiae of Thomas Aquinas in great detail, I don't normally read the part of the sacraments, but I'm not Catholic, for one thing. But it says here the following. Oh, somebody's complaining about, as is his wont, he's raising a question, then presenting a bunch of what do you call objections to a position that Thomas will be defending, and then Thomas will then give his view and then respond to each of these objections. Now, the objection is, first of all, the question is, it's supplement question 44, Article 2 in it's in Volume 5 of I won't go into the details right now, but there's a place where it says the question of the second article is whether matrimony is fittingly named. So it has to do with names and title and the words and stuff. And this person's saying that it's not well named, and I hadn't noticed this before, but apparently the word, if you look at it, matrimony has matra in it. So that means mother. So the word marriage or matrimony, the sacrament, why has it got mother in it? Now it says here, the objection is, it would seem that matrimony is unfittingly named because a thing should be named after that which ranks higher. But the father ranks above the mother. Therefore, the union of father and mother should rather be named after the father, should be patrimony. That's interesting. There is a patrimony, isn't there? There is a word patrimony that does connect to father. But anyway, so that's a complaint. Hey, what the hell? Why is marriage should be named after the man? He ranks higher. And then Thomas gives his view of the matter, and for the moment, I'm just going to give his reply to that objection. And he says, that although the father, he's agreeing that the father ranks above the mother. Although the father ranks above the mother has more to do with the offspring than the father does. Or we may say that the woman was made chiefly in order to be man's helpmate in relation to the offspring, whereas the man was not made for this purpose. wherefore the wherefore. I'm gonna have to look up the meaning of wherefore. I thought wherefore meant why, but anyway, wherefore the mother has a closer relation to the nature of marriage than father. So Thomas, who's great with coming up with answers to complaints, says, well, it's okay to name marriage after the mother because there's a sense in which marriage itself is more closely connected to the nature of marriage is more closely related to the mother. Anyway, and then he also says things like, I just read this part today. Actually, he says, at some point he says, there are three things may be considered in matrimony. First, its essence, which is a joining together, and in reference to this, it is called the conjugal union. And anyway, actually, there's other complaints about other names, like why is it called nuptials? Why is it called conjugal? Anyway, but then he goes on to say, a woman's sole purpose in marrying should be motherhood. Matrimony may also be resolved into, anyway, so he's explaining why the etymology of matrimony, nuptials, and conjugal relations are all fitting. Okay, but the point is, in the process of that, he gives some doctrine about the nature of women. And so there's not just Muslims, right? And he's saying that a woman's sole purpose, he's quoting Augustine in Contra Faust something, a woman's sole purpose in marrying should be motherhood, and so on and so forth. So my point is not so much to assess the validity of these claims, but the point is that you can have these kinds of beliefs, and if you have that particular belief about the nature of women and their purpose and all that stuff, then your feminism, your theory about the nature of women and their flourishing, how they, or their self-realization, or their becoming happy in the fullest sense, is going to be what you need to do is going to be affected by that. That is, if you're a feminist, that is, say you're somebody who actively wants to improve the lot of women on Earth, how you go about that will depend on your ideology of women and their relationship to men and their role in society and so on and so forth. So therefore, this formal and neutral definition of feminism, like the formal and neutral definition of feminist, allows for any different kinds of content to be put in there. So feminism then would be an ideology or theory about the nature of women and their what is the nature of woman? What is the essence of woman? What is it to be a woman? What is the relationship between a woman and non-woman, like men? And what is their role in the family? What is their role in society? What makes women happy? Now, I think it's fairly clear that what makes women happy, although it overlaps with what makes men happy, and a certain level of abstraction, you might say it's the same thing. But as a matter of fact, women's nature is different, and what makes them happy is not the same as men. And so, if you have feminism, must be able to deal with these questions. There must be some theory. And so, on the basis of that theory, which you at some point come to sincerely hold, if you, for whatever reason, really find it your calling in life to try to make the life of women better, then the feminism would be the theory on the basis of which you do that. And not everybody has that calling. For example, I have a friend who is a woman, and her calling is to, for some reason, to help people with disabilities. And that's what her life is devoted to, and she tries to understand that, and she tries to constantly improve her understanding, and she's studying now to get her PhD and so on. And so she has to have, so she's like a disableist in the sense of an activist for disabled people, although she's not disabled herself, although she's experienced it temporarily and she's had a lot of contact with it. Um, but in order to help the disabled people, you need to understand a lot of stuff about disabilities in particular countries, about the law, about what disabled people want, and so on and so forth. So she has a disabilitism theory that she can then use in her disabilitist activity. And so, same thing, and a nationalist, maybe the same thing. You have to have some understanding of what your country is and so on. So a feminist is a person who has some understanding of what it means to be a woman, where women's well-being lies, and therefore has chosen certain activities to engage in that this person feels that consistently with that understanding will make women more happy. So anyway, that's not too bad considering my head was empty when I began this. Let's see if I can then turn this off here.